The bad news keeps coming for Ukraine. Russia is not only gaining ground along key front lines, it's also preparing to launch a massive counteroffensive in the southern Russian region of Kursk, the only place where Ukraine has seen major military success this year. All of this as Ukraine nears 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion, and it's now facing, of course, uncertainty with its most important ally, the United States. But during an interview, Zelensky said one thing is certain as President-elect Trump prepares to return to the White House.
I
believe that the war will end, and it will not end in the abstract, but there's no exact date. However, the war will end faster with the policy of the team that will now lead the White House. This is their approach, their promise to their society, and it is also very important to them.
And joining us now, CNN national security analyst and former deputy director of national intelligence, Beth Sanner. Beth, nice to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jessica.
I first just want to know what you make of that comment I just played from President Zelensky.
Right. And I think I couldn't really hear at the end, but the last sentence that I read, he said, was that, and it's up to Ukraine to make sure that this war ends in the next year and with, a politically negotiated ending, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Zelensky and the Ukrainians in general are just, they're the ultimate in realists. If you are a country that is, weaker, you have to figure out how you are going to make it. And in Ukraine's case, this is about survival. So I think he understands that Ukraine is at risk of being a pawn in this. And his statement to me is absolutely about making sure that President Trump knows that he is going to be part of the solution and not the problem, that Ukraine is willing to go to the negotiating table.
Okay, and to that end, Zelensky met with both Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump when he visited earlier this summer. And there's another clip I want to play from this meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Here's this.
We have a very good relationship, and I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it resolved.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have, oh, I see. Yeah, but it takes two to tango.
And I know you were listening, but when you watch that video, kind of the look on Zelensky's face, and he looks at him, he goes, "I think we have a good relationship." You say, your kind of categorization of where Ukraine finds itself right now is they try to prepare to be in as good of a position as possible. What do you think are kind of the best and worst case scenarios for them if Trump does indeed go forward with trying to negotiate a deal with Putin to end this war?
Well, I think that, in some ways, a lot of people around Zelensky, they do not have a great relationship with the U.S. administration right now. It's not all, rainbows and sunshine. And so in some ways, I think that there are certainly parts of Ukrainian society and leadership who welcomes the Trump administration and their kind of realistic approach. And they're hoping that what happens in the end here is that Trump will realize that Russia actually is not willing to compromise and that he is going to have to support them and force Russia to make compromises. I think the worst case is probably not the most likely. I do not think that President Trump wants to go down as the greatest appeaser of Russia in history. Like looking like a Chamberlain. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants to end this war, but and I think that he believes that it is on fair terms. I think that fairness is in the eyes of the beholder, and so that measurement stick is really going to be about how each side sees this, and it's going to be a little harder than it looks at first glance.
I also want to ask you about one of Trump's picks, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. He selected her to be the director of national intelligence. You worked as the former deputy director of national intelligence. And I'm just wondering if you can explain to our viewers kind of why critics are so alarmed at the selection of Tulsi Gabbard and what the DNI's role is when it comes to our intelligence.
Yeah, so the DNI has these kind of big kind of titular responsibilities under the statute of overseeing the 18 agencies that make up the intelligence community. But the power of that person is, kind of as much or as little in some ways as what they want to put into the job. Things just don't happen automatically. Each agency has a lot of power, but where the DNI has a lot of power is in controlling what message gets to the president and what is published as intelligence community analytic products and what isn't, as well as decisions about programs and personnel. So this idea of like Schedule F, where you would have kind of political appointee type things, that would all go through the ODNI. So is quite a bit of power there in subtle ways, even though agencies have a lot of individual power as well. And the DCIA also technically works for her.
Right. And I just quickly want to play a clip from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in 2019. She went so far as to say she thought Russians were grooming Tulsi Gabbard. Let's listen to what she said.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
Yeah.
And Clinton's spokesperson later confirmed she was talking about Gabbard there. And she's not the only one who's made these accusations of her being essentially a Russian asset. Do you share that assessment?
I really think that people should be careful about going down this track of like defining someone as an asset. I mean, that's like being a traitor. So I think that, you have to have an investigation. You have to have a background investigation. And I don't think those things should be skipped when it comes to the heads of U.S. intelligence. But that said, clearly she is repeating the propaganda of places like RT, and she is, mimicking these things. But you will find those ideas all over the U.S. internet and circulating in these different chat rooms and things. And so I don't know if that really tells us where she gets the, to be the head of intelligence, you're supposed to protect it. And she's done some things and said some things that suggest that maybe she doesn't see the same way as an intelligence professional like I do.
All right, Beth Sanner, as always, thank you so much for your thoughts there. We appreciate it.